Ready when you are.
Okay. I call this meeting of Township High School District 211 Board of Education to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Miss Barron? Mr. Bradley?
Here.
Miss Cavill? Here. Mr. Dombrowski?
Here.
Mr. McGowan? Mr. Rosenblum?
Here.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Here. Okay.
Yep.
And would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. The next item on the agenda is public comments. We do not have anyone signed in or members in the audience. Then that takes us to the superintendent leadership profile, and I would invite the members from Haya to please come forward. And we have Dr. Brian Harris and Dr. Karen Sullivan. And I'm going to ask Dr. Harris if he would introduce his associate that's with us this evening.
Absolutely. And good evening, everyone. And thank you for having this special meeting, especially for this purpose of going through the superintendent search leadership profile. As you probably saw in the documents that have been shared with you, we have a lot of information and we've hopefully summarized it for you. I would like to introduce Janera Walters here, who is a new associate. I'll let her introduce herself with H2A.
Good evening to the board president and the rest of the board members. My name is Janera Walters. I am the former superintendent. I retired from Kankakee School District 111, and it's a pleasure to work on have this opportunity to help you find your next superintendent.
So Dr. Walters is new to the firm, and so we are excited to have her join us. And so she's learning a little bit. She does know about the superintendency and does know all that, but the search process is unique in itself. All of us had our initial opportunity in the past, and so we're very happy to have her joining us here. She did participate in some of the focus group work that we're going to be talking about tonight, and also will actively involved in recruiting and will be screening candidates with us as well. Dr. Arndt could not be here tonight, so Dr. Sullivan and I will be running through the slide deck and we'll be having any questions as we move forward. All right, well, let's go ahead and let's talk about, let's see here. There we go. The collection of data. We, as you know, spent the last 4 weeks collecting information in multiple ways through focus groups, interviews, and through the district survey. One thing I want to note of all of these, we had a very broad participation, and it really matched well to the demographics of your district. Whether it was the student groups, the staff groups, the parent groups, it really was an excellent representation of your district profile when it comes to students and parents and the community. So wanted to start with that comment. Just in summary, we had 1,982 survey responses, which was really good. For this district, we were hoping right at 2,000 was kind of a target, in our experience, and it was really well done there. The district communications did an excellent job getting that QRC code out, and we saw it a lot.
Yeah, I shared with the board president before that probably the best we've seen in terms of outreach to try to get people to attend the forums, come to the, do the survey, et cetera.
So
Excellent
kudos
job.
to your communication team. That was really well done. And you can see here, the participation broke down in the different categories. And again, that's typical. Usually we always see percentage-wise a high amount of parents, participating in the survey, which was a little bit of almost half of the survey participants were parents. The qualitative research, also there was 25 focus groups in all. We had 4 open forums, 2 virtual and 2 in person, and finally 8 individual interviews, which all of you participated in those. So, which was excellent. And so that's the summary of the participants. About 186 people participating in those individual and small group conversations. Okay, turn over to Karen.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the survey. The one thing that I will share, because you opted to have your survey done in several different languages, is we did have 57 times the survey was taken in something other than English. We had 6 taken in Ukrainian, 6 in Polish, and 45 in Spanish. So I wanted to at least share, so that since you went to that effort to try to make sure that the languages were out there for people, that was the response that we did get. So we did want to say, which is the good news, 87% of the respondents rated the quality of education in the district as good or excellent, which is a very high response. So something to be really proud of. And we heard that over and over in the focus groups as well, as the quality of education, the number of opportunities, that was very well. That was one of the things almost everyone said. In terms of strengths of the district, the survey's divided up into these 4 major categories that you see down there that's labeled as the key. These are research-based areas of effective superintendents, okay, and effective school districts. So vision and values, teaching and learning, community engagement, management. So you can see the top 5 identified in the survey were mostly related to the management category. So technology well integrated, facilities well maintained, the technology infrastructure that's needed for classrooms, your schools are safe, and you have effective teachers, administrators, and support staff in your school. Those were all identified as strengths of the district. When we looked at the expectations for the next superintendent, you'll see that there's a broader range of categories here than management when you look at what people were looking for. The first one, fostering a positive professional climate of mutual trust, et cetera, that is the one category that was in the top of every group. So it didn't matter if it was an administrator, a parent, a community member, all of them had that as in their top 4, because we had asked them to select their top 4. Recruiting and employing effective personnel was one of the expectations, or in the top. Understand and be sensitive to the needs of a diverse student population. We heard that loud and clear. Establish a culture of high expectations and transparent communication. And we're going to talk about the focus groups next, and there were clear themes. Some of the same themes came through. And that is, we mentioned to you, I know when we talked to you, that what we were looking for were themes. I will go back to the survey. When you look at the survey report, the one graph that I always think is interesting are these graphs where you look and see whether or not the dots are close together or not. And that means, do you all agree? So you guys were pretty tight in compared to some of the districts that we've worked with. The one area you'll see is with community. And that's just good to know, in that maybe that the communication piece that we've seen come through in several things, maybe that their perception is a little bit different than what the rest of the other groups' perception of the district is. Does that make some sense? But yours were really, especially in your leadership down here about the summary, you were very close on what you thought was important. So that's good. You didn't have wild disparities. On the focus group, in terms of strengths, you can see some of the same themes. Again, quality of education, a community that's really involved. There's a commitment here to be excellent and to innovate as much as possible. The offerings and opportunities for students it's hard to match that elsewhere. People really saw that. They felt you had a really highly skilled and committed staff. They mentioned the financial stability here, that it's well managed. And they mentioned that, the district really works to support diverse needs, student well-being, and kind of an environment of inclusivity. So that was strengths that we saw across the focus groups. In terms of challenges, recruiting and retaining qualified administrative staff in particular, it came up. And there was some discussion about feeling that you were losing some of your administrators. They would come in for a couple years and then go to other area districts for either a compensation package that was better or less roles and responsibilities for that same kind of position. We heard over and over that the administrative structure really needed to be looked at, that it was a bit outdated, that student needs have changed over the years, and that our structure for supporting that has not changed, and that would be something they think needs to be addressed. Again, meeting the needs of an evolving population, everybody recognized that. People saw the work in career readiness, but also felt there's more to be done in that particular area. And especially in terms of your staff who see what's happening in other districts, they do look around you and want to make sure that they are staying with, if not, a little ahead of what's happening around you. Facility infrastructure improvements were talked about, especially athletic facilities. We heard that pretty consistently. And then just navigating various community perspectives and demands. You all probably know about community perspectives and demands, but also knowing that they need to strive to support equitable resources and support across the schools. Everyone talked about how each school is different, had different needs. Equal isn't equitable in those cases, and that was something that we heard as being a challenge.
So the immediate and future priorities, and again, this is a nice summary. After we talked about the strengths and weaknesses with every group, then we said, okay, then what are the priorities for the next superintendent in your opinion? So here's the common themes that we saw. The strong communication channels. And it wasn't that communication didn't happen, but there didn't seem to be a consistent pattern with it. And depending on let me give you an example. When we talked with the students, by the way, we enjoyed talking with the students at all 7 of your facilities. And the kids were, every once in a while, they would bring up, and the hot topic was cell phones, just so you know.
Yeah.
You probably know that. That's not, but it was so, they brought it up every time. We didn't bring it up. Every building, and every building's a little different. They're not all the same, but they all knew what the other buildings were doing. And so the kids are all connected, they all talk. And so there was a hot topic. And so there was this communication channel. Like, for example, it was a common theme with the kids said, well, nobody asked us. The adults just decided what was going to happen, and nobody asked us on that topic. That was just their hot topic right now, right? And if you have high school kids, you probably know exactly what's going on. And so they were pretty vocal about that in the student groups. But that was an example of communication. They felt like they were left out of that loop, that they weren't asked or, provided a seat at the table when the decisions were being made about their phones. I think visibility and relationship building, key aspect. It's almost that face of the district. And I remember that was one of the comments that you noticed,
Yes.
Dr. Walters. And, being visible out in the community, in the schools, and that came up often. And that, along with that engagement, the access to ELL and support programs, that's an evolving challenge across the district. It probably is going to continue to be for many years to come. And knowing that parents and kids know what access they have to, those types of programs and support. Some of them, especially first generation families, don't always know what's available and how that process happens. I know the outreach is there, but there may be some opportunities to get better. Financial oversight and stability, again, that's a key function of any superintendent in any district. And then finally, school safety is always a topic. It came up in almost every conversation. Your schools got, I thought, excellent situation. Everybody, when we talked to staff and students, everybody felt safe, but it's always on their mind, always. And it's probably not going to go away anytime soon. A few other of the future priorities, equity and diversity, the evolving nature of your student population and community population was clearly noted. The administrative professional development for leadership and structure, that again, we really believe the next superintendent really needs to come in and do, take a hard look at your administrative structure. And that's, from department chairs all the way up to the superintendent and how that whole org chart looks.
And we actually heard that from the teacher union as well, which is unusual.
Teachers said it. Yeah, absolutely. And parent groups did too. So this was a theme. And again, I think they're looking at neighboring districts and your comparable districts, and they're saying, okay, why are we different, or why haven't we evolved in that component? And then the community and regional partnerships, you know this, you all live here. It's an amazing community. All the different villages and cities there, excellent. And the resources are there and how to leverage those for the best for the kids. As Karen mentioned, the facility needs and infrastructure, I think they're paying attention mostly to athletic areas is where we heard that theme come up. And then finally, the focus on student achievement and career readiness and that whole, career piece is excellent. So the final question we asked was the characteristics for the next superintendent. And what we've done here in the slide deck is we have broken these up into 3 different categories. The first category is personal qualities. And again, I'm not going to read all these to you, but they want a nice person, right? A people person. That's my comment as a summary of what all these characteristics mean. So when we start, thinking about candidates, when we start screening and when you eventually interview and select your person, hopefully they check these boxes up on this screen. The second piece was professional qualifications. And so these were some of the common components that we saw with professional qualifications. I'll point out a couple of them in particular. High school experience was definitely something that was mentioned repeatedly. A strategic thing, the DEI commitment, understanding what that means for High School District 211, and somebody who has had experience in that type of leadership role wherever they've been, and be able to speak to that and be able to lead in that area. Cultural competence kind of falls in that same area, right? It's a whole range of things when you're talking about, that topic. And finally, problem solver and a servant leader was another common theme. Somebody who understands the purpose and the role of being a superintendent in High School District 211. And finally, the desired attributes. This was a little broader. This was more how they do their work, right? And how they would engage with families and parents and community members and your intergovernmental relationships and with staff and with students and, be community focused. The long-term commitment was hopefully somebody would come here and stay here and get roots and be here for a period of time. Caring and supportive. Again, that is, empathetic was a word that came up, I know, periodically about somebody who, you can't ever tell everybody yes all the time. They want somebody who will listen and understand and empathize with, people's concerns and challenges. And then finally, be a positive morale builder. That's always, when you lead a big organization like this and a community facing, that's a key, attribute there. So this is a lot of information. We wanted to at least summarize this for you, but we want to make sure that, we answer any questions that you have at this point. So quickly, the next steps. I think we're going to stop here, and maybe I'll come back to this. I think I'm changing my thought here before I talk about this last slide. What questions can we answer for you about what we shared here in the slide deck, any of the reports, the leadership profile report, the survey report, or the desired characteristics document that we summarized? And that's kind of a recruiting document, it's what that is. And we want to make sure that we use it when we're talking with potential candidates and when we generate interview questions. So
Right.
questions you have?
I'd like to start with Steve. Do you have any questions?
I'll pass and come back to me, please.
Okay. All right. Ms. Barron?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions.
Great.
Well, thank you first of all for putting this presentation together and joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. You talked a little bit about administrative structure. Any more insight as to, you talked a little bit about, neighboring districts and, we do things a little bit different, but any other insight that you can provide on our administrative structure?
Well, we didn't get totally in the weeds on that, but we heard that over and over. Mostly, I think especially at the building level, they felt it was more operationally focused versus tactical teaching and learning, curriculum kind of focused. The needs of kids have changed, over the years, and you've added programs, you've added other initiatives, but your structure has stayed essentially the same. So I think just having someone come in and take a look at it. It wasn't like someone said, here's what it should be, but they just all spoke to that.
There was clearly a reference to curriculum instruction leadership. Other high schools, if you take a look, they usually have an assistant principal for curriculum instruction. That is typical. Your high schools do not have that. Okay, now I'm not saying somebody's not doing that function, whether it's the principal, whether we don't know, we didn't dig into that. Whoever the next superintendent
Should be
is,
looking at that,
should dig
yeah.
into that and at least evaluate what's going on there. We don't have a recommendation. It's more, it just came up. It came up often, especially in our conversations with staff.
That's about it. Thank you so much.
Mr. Bradley?
No, but thank you guys for being here tonight. I think I am good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Cavill?
I don't actually have, I think this is a historic first, that I don't have any follow-up questions. I do really appreciate, especially the presentation before we got into the weeds on everything. I really appreciate the detail and the data provided about what came from where, how many people exactly were surveyed. And though it wasn't on the slide, the extra information about it being well represented as to, you know, the community that we serve, both inside the school and at the community at large, that the data collection was representative was really important to me. So I'm really, really pleased to hear that we got such a good response and that response was broadly representational. And so, yeah, thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate it.
We knew that was a topic for the board. We'd heard that multiple times and these guys, so we wanted, and we were very conscious of that when we were looking at the focus group, the makeup of them. And principals, by the way, did a great job with the kids and then the staff that participated. So we definitely had a representative mix for sure.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes, thank you. Can you speak more to the challenges? I have an understanding of what the staff perceive as challenges and what our superintendent will have to come in and try to rectify. I also understand where our students are coming from as far as having a voice at the table. I'm not sure what the challenge is for the parents as being identified. It seems like retaining and the discussion you had about staff turnover appears to be more along the lines of our internal staff, but I'd like to know what were the key issues that parents were seeing as challenges for the district.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, there was a couple that come to my mind. We did not necessarily break it down that way. However, I do recall when we met with parents and what we heard, I believe it definitely was about communication. It was about, they said they were communicated with, but felt like at times if they didn't always engage proactively, they weren't always receiving what they needed in a timely fashion. So parents were definitely, or this was community in general. And so there was some of that for sure. It was the communication channels. I think they all said they weren't always sure. They definitely paid attention to what their principals sent them, but necessarily not always maybe from a district, from a big picture perspective, if that makes sense. I'm trying to recall here.
Yeah, that's right.
There was definitely that from the parents. The other thing with parents, it was definitely the mental health that came up several times because I think they see their teenagers at home and mention, you know, the concern. They know the district's doing a lot, but know that that's a real thing for them every day.
I think the other thing I remember from parents was they all knew their school, each school was different, and that there were different needs at different schools that need to be addressed, and they understood that.
Yeah, when we met with the booster parents, that was a theme, right? There was that when we had one of the focus groups. I don't know if you were on that one, but we had the booster parents, so it was a representative from all the schools, and they were talking about some of the, I wouldn't call them inequities, that's not what they called it, but there was differences between the schools, and they wanted to make sure that all the schools, regardless of how much, you know, between Palatine and Hoffman or Schaumburg and Fremd and that type of thing. I think they see it out visually sometimes that's out there, even though it may not be reality. Again, it was a combination of communication and resource allocation. Does that make sense?
Somewhat. I'm just trying to ensure that the next superintendent will have some guidelines when, engaging parents and not, generalities. So in the survey that aligned with what the focus groups, it sounds like you're recollecting focus group conversations. I just want to make sure that the focus group in the survey align with what I'm hearing.
There were opportunities to improve in the survey.
If I
Yes.
may add to it, I know I started reading the comments that we got from families. And there was like 44 pages of the comments. So I got through page 20. I know they talked about rigor, academics for the kids. They talked about, at least my interpretation, and I'm not sure if these came from parents. It seemed that way possibly, but, some of the academics, supporting the kids, the interactions with the teachers and communication seemed to come out.
Right, and the comments aren't they're not broken apart,
Right.
but our survey data is by
Correct.
who took what. So I'm just wondering if
Yeah,
we
the
have-
survey in the back in the appendix, you
Yeah.
can see by group, so you can
Right.
see, and if you look down, the lowest numbers are on things like really related to communication. The district engages the community as a partner to improve the school system.
Was there an option for rigor then,
I am looking there.
or is that why that came out in the comments?
It came out the comments. It was the focus group.
So there was no real.
Students are on track to be ready for the next grade and ultimately college and career. You got a 73% said yes.
Okay.
That's why you probably see too that 87%
Still
of the
are very
people
happy.
thought things were in a good place. So even, we didn't see any real emerging themes other than communication. The career readiness thing wasn't, they know you're doing things, but maybe not enough. We heard that, and that came out in the survey.
And I
as
also
well.
think that's because that's currently the conversation that's happening out in the world. Is college for everyone, or should we be looking at these other opportunities for kids? So I think they're hearing that, they're seeing some things. They're seeing what's happening in some of the other area districts. We see we're doing things. We just need to keep enhancing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenblum, do you have any questions?
Yes, first of all, thank you very much, HYA, for putting this all together and sharing this information with you. Very informative. Into Mrs. Klimkowitz's point, I also have been, and I'm still going through the verbatim comments that were submitted, and I don't think this is the place to get into specifics, but there seems to be some references in some of the comments to maybe candidate recommendations, at least one that I saw in specific, but I didn't, it said, recommending the person below, but I didn't see a name, and I'm not sure if that was taken off for any particular reason. But I'm wondering if and I saw a couple other recommendations that were in there early on in the comments, and I'm wondering if you received in the focus groups and the survey, if you received a lot of recommendations from which you may be following up if they were recommended by those who were providing feedback. Can you share that?
Thank you for bringing that up. That was, people could put names in there. That was a separate document that we received, the associates received. And I mean, our job is to follow up on all those names. Some of them were definitely candidates that we should pursue. Some of them, I mean, there was
Some of them were not.
there was Mickey Mouse and, that type of stuff in there. So I'm just saying, literally, that was one of the,
Yes.
responses. So we had a couple pages of names that came in a separate document directly to us. So we are following up on every single one of the ones that were given to us. And truthfully, some of those names were already on our list.
Right.
And so we were happy to see that there was some concurrence there.
And as you know, we also asked in all the focus groups, so we did get, not many, but we did get some names from the focus group that we
did.
would follow up on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I also agree with one or two of the other board members that I've heard in this meeting that if there's a way to provide us with a little bit further breakdown of the groups and their responses, so that we have different groups of people and their perspective of things to be able to address them accordingly. Like I'm reading through some of the student comments and perspectives, and as perhaps we would expect, they're a little different than the parents' perspectives, right? So it'd be interesting to see different people, different groups of people, and their answers to the survey, so that number one, we're able to address them accordingly. But sometimes people like to have feedback from their comments and their feedback that they've given to us. And if there's consistent messages coming across to us with recommendations on strengths and challenges, maybe there's a way for us as a board and as a district to address, I'm hoping that we address those things, right? But also to be able to provide feedback to the groups of people who provided those recommendations, that feedback to us, so that they know that their voices are being heard beyond the superintendent search recommendations, because the survey and the information we received went well beyond just the superintendent criteria, right? But it's giving us a ton of very, very, very useful information. And I thank you for providing us with that to help us not only select a great superintendent to take us forward, but also to help us as a school district to respond and be even better.
Well, thank you. A couple thoughts as I was listening, and please jump in here. When we collect qualitative data, which is what the focus group, the interviews were, when you do qualitative research, the key is always to look for common themes. And hence why we had, the 25 groups, it was a combination. It was your intergovernmental people, it was parents, it was staff, it was students, it was all of your stakeholders. And so we, and then we consolidated that into some summary statements. There was definitely more connections with those groups than there were outliers, just so you know, for sure. We identified a couple of them. Like I said, no parent or no community member brought up the cell phone issue. That was a student issue, okay? And we told the kids, if any of them were watching, that we would make sure the board heard that because it was a common theme, all right? And so I just think it's important for the next superintendent to understand that too. This issue's not going away. And it's probably going to, take different directions over the next several years and the impact on instruction, right? And everybody has but it was definitely, there was a few outlying themes. Any other thought on that, Karen? Or
So, Mr. Rosenblum, what I'm hearing you say is that this is an opportunity to tailor a little bit of communication to the different stakeholders, saying, I heard you say, students, that you're concerned about cell phones. We're listening to you. And then you take it from there. Like, I actually think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So let us take a look at it. I mean, we have all of our notes that we took and with every group we met with, and we can see if there's, particular items that were outliers is what I would say.
Yeah. And I guess, go ahead,
I
Mr.
guess-
Rosenblum.
I guess my thought is, we're always asking the community for feedback, right? In many, many different ways. And this feedback to me is very, very rich in information. And I would like to see how we can use that information. And I don't want to say necessarily be responsive, but be supportive of some of the data, the recommendations, the information that's being presented to us, to be able to improve ourselves. And with an incoming superintendent, that was already mentioned, use some of these things to help that individual design and develop initiatives and programs and priorities some of which have been mentioned in this feedback already, to move us forward in the best way.
So,
Madam President.
I want to thank you guys very much, and I say you guys in a very Midwesterny way, to provide us with this information. I think it's excellent.
Thank you.
Madam President, I would just like to emphasize that my position is that we stick to the scope that we hired HYA for and not deviate from that and try to task them with additional data analysts that doesn't fall within their scope of services.
Thank you. I agree with that. And that's what I was going to say. I think we do need to make a general acknowledgement and a thank you to everybody who participated, and we can do that through our communication. But any of these comments, that was for the board information and something for us to work with the new superintendent. And I know as far as the cell phones, it was quite a lot of discussion with the teachers, with the administration. And I do believe that there were some students involved, but probably not the ones that were in this group. But I think, each school has the parent advisory. So I really don't want to pull out any kind of specifics, because that, if you did it for this one, then why aren't you doing it for this one? So just general thank yous to everyone. So I think we're good. And as Mr. Dombrowski said, let's continue to move forward. And if we may, we're going to allow the panel to summarize everything.
Yeah. And we will look at that to see if there's anything we didn't say already. And we've already highlighted a couple things. So, okay. Other questions?
Okay, you were going to summarize?
All right. We definitely want to talk about this last slide, though. Okay. So moving forward, what the work that we're stepping into now, which we've already started, but we are full swing into it after tonight, is to review all applications. I looked right before I came in here tonight. We've got 11 fully completed applications. We've got 6 more that are in the queue that look like they just have a couple things to add. And we are still actively pursuing a lot of candidates, all of us sitting here, as well as Dr. Arndt, and do anticipate, more applicants between now and next Friday. The application process closes next Friday, and then we are going to start screening. We will be doing all the background checks on our own and connected pieces that we need to on and off the resume, just so you know, that's part of our work. And then we will present, that slate to the board for consideration on the 19th. We will also be loading all of those, any of them that complete the full application, we will load them onto the board portal, okay?
that are qualified.
Yeah, that are qualified. So
Qualified.
anybody who
Has their license.
has a license, because sometimes we get an application that does not have a license, so we would never recommend them and highly advise you not to. And
But
then
we'll see their application, or they'll show up as an application in the portal,
we
even
can,
if they're
we
not
can do,
qualified.
if they're qualified.
even if they're not qualified.
If you want them, we'll put
Why
them
not? We
on
can put
there.
them there, but
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Just
I
to
don't-
see the
do we have
reach. I
one
mean,
yet?
I understand.
I
I think we have one that maybe
might
doesn't
have
have a
one.
license.
There's-
Okay.
you wouldn't be able to hire them. You'd
No,
have
no,
to hire another
understood. You
You can
superintendent.
see it.
Yep.
It's not secret. It's just, they're not really a legitimate candidate, truthfully.
No,
But
that's-
if you want to see it, we'll put them on there. And we may even clarify that, hey, this candidate doesn't even have
Doesn't meet the
the
requirement.
credential. Okay.
That would be good. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And so on the September 19th, we will be back. And a part of that will be at closed session. So we start talking about candidates and the ones in that you want to interview. We also will do a interview workshop with you, which we'll talk about questions to ask. And there is we will be sending information to the board president as sample questions based on this profile and suggestions. However, you get asked the questions that you want to ask. Okay, we'll offer they'll be directly related to the information you see here, but you can edit them, you can change them, you can do that work. We do have a short window between the 19th and your first interview the following week. So we need to be prepared that evening to at least in the next day or two after that to get that interview question cleaned up, if that makes sense. So you're ready to go when we have the first interviews set the following week. Okay?
And I think we'll be okay, because
Yeah.
we'll have the questions, and then we can talk about them, and
Yeah.
I think we'll be good.
And we'll have that sent to you, and so you'll see it in advance of the 19th. Okay, So a little homework, but it'll help us pedal fast to be prepared for the interviews the following week. And then you've got your interviews tentatively set for the week of the 23rd. You've got a couple days identified, and then the second round interviews the week of October 7th as well. And then we're still on target for that October 17th meeting, and hopefully we will get there. We'll see where it goes, but you're in great shape as far as the process, and but we do have a lot to do, and we're looking forward to supporting you every step of the way until that person's hired.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Mickey Mouse isn't going to become available.
I just looked at that when I kind of chuckled. Like,
I always
He's not
like Donald
available.
Duck better anyway.
Who knows? Well, I thank you very much for the presentation, Dr. Sullivan, Dr. Harris, and Dr. Walters. Thank you so much for being here and putting everything together and answering our questions. That leaves us to one last action item here. And the recommended action is that the Board of Education approve the superintendent leadership profile. May I have a motion, please?
So move.
So moved. Okay, second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Okay, bear with me just. one
Okey dokey.
moment. Ms. Cavill, aye. Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. So the motion carries. So again, thank you very much, and we look forward to some wonderful and interesting candidates that you'll be sending to us.
We're excited, and then we'll look forward to the next
See you on
step.
the 19th.
That's right.
Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you.
That leads us to one last item that we're going to be going into closed session. And the recommended action is that the board will enter closed session to discuss appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees. May I have a motion, please?
So move.
Second,
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill, aye. Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. Thank you. The motion carries, and we'll go into closed session.
Hello.
You're back on speakerphone, Mr. Rosenblum.
All right.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right, thank you very much. All right, the next recommended action is that the Board of Education return to open session. May I have a motion, please?
So move.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill, aye. Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye, the motion carries. And with no other business to come before the board, then the chair declares the meeting adjourned at 6:49 PM.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. And happy Labor